monster mile. They know it is a concrete cage that can crash cars and crush championship dreams.
Really loose. You do the best you can.
Oh, we got trouble.
Right rear tire's gone on the 88 car.
Uh-oh, you see smoke coming out of this 18 car.
Blow it up.
His championship hopes have basically evaporated. Also having issues, the 11 car. Denny Hamlin been on and off pit road several times. Talk about peaking at the right time. Momentum coming their way here in the chase.
Had enough of 4 tires and we'll pass anybody that gets 2. You know what I mean?
We heard Carl Edwards say he wanted 4. He'd pass anybody that got 2. He ended up with 2 tires.
We'll see how this works. If it works like last time, we'll have no worries.
Yeah, 10-4.
I think that the 4 tires now are starting to overhaul Carl Edwards.
Greg Biffle wins back-to-back in the 2008 chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup. Greg Biffle has been the last man standing. He has been the best of the best in back-to-back weeks, and now we head to Kansas, where Greg Biffle won a year ago. After Dover, the shuffle of 8 of the 12 spots moved around on the points. Biffle now tied for second. Big gainer Kevin Harvick up 5 spot. Big loser Earnhardt Jr. and Denny Hamlin back to 9th and 11th respectively. You can sum up the 2008 chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup with 2 words: Greg Biffle. And if that doesn't work for you, Shannon Spake, you could use 2 other words as well.
Doc, those 2 other words, Roush Fenway. They've certainly been on top of their game since the start of the chase 2 weekends ago. Of course, Greg Biffle's gone to victory lane twice. Carl Edwards currently leads the point standings for 2 weeks in a row. And last week, after collectively leading the most laps, they went on to that 1-2-3 finish. Now, while Kansas was not very kind to Edwards and Kenseth last season, they finished 37th and 35th at this track, respectively. The Greg Biffle story at this track has a much better outcome. In 4 starts, he has 3 top 3 finishes. Now, knowing that, it could very well be another Roush Fenway weekend, making it a September to remember for that team. Mike Massaro?
Well, thanks, Shannon. Jimmy Johnson could not hold off the Roush Fenway onslaught a week ago, but that's okay. He trails point leader Carl Edwards by just 10 points and is currently riding a streak of 4 consecutive top 5 finishes. But Johnson is keeping things in perspective. He knows there's still a lot of racing to go, 8 races remaining, and he says it's way too early to get excited. But one thing that's giving him confidence is that he knows that having experience under these chase conditions, his team is not going to succumb to the pressure and make silly mistakes. One thing, though, that he's real confident in, his qualifying efforts here in Kansas. He's the only driver with 2 Kansas poles. His team tells me they're going to concentrate on qualifying trim throughout the course of this practice. We'll find out if he can pick up his 3rd Kansas pole later this afternoon. But right now, we've got practice for race 3 of the chase coming up next.
Welcome you live to our ESPN coverage of NASCAR Sprint Cup Series practice from Kansas Speedway here in Kansas City, Kansas. It is stop number 3 for the 2008 chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup. Hello, everyone. Welcome inside our pit studio overlooking pit road here at Kansas Speedway, along with Dale Jarrett and Andy Petrie. I'm Jerry Punch. Glad to have you with us. And guys, a year ago, it was the Hendrick Motorsports team that got hot and won 6 of 10 races in the chase. This year, it is Roush Fenway and Greg Biffle. How does that happen that one team suddenly in the 4th quarter of the season can just be on fire?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with these teams were experimenting, getting things kind of in order. They know that these last 10 races are where things really count. They got themselves in the position to get into the chase, and then now they've got everything put together. Plus, you know, kind of like an NFL team, may not show all the plays during the regular season until they start into the playoffs and trying to get to the Super Bowl. They want to have something that might surprise others, and I think that's exactly what Jack Roush and his organization, his teams have done here.
And I'm not sure Greg Biffle's team was able to go out there and really push for wins because they weren't that solid of making the chase. And now that they've made the chase, they are really pulling out all the stops, going for wins. They know that they have to go out there and win a lot of races to win this title, and that's exactly what they're doing. And so far, so good.
You know, Greg Biffle's sort of been the Miami Dolphins of NASCAR. They had the glory years, and then recently the wins were sort of hard to come by, and suddenly they just show up out of nowhere and knock off the heavyweights. Now, what about the 18 car? It was so good and the dominant car, without a doubt, in the regular season, 8 victories. They have gone from bad to worse in terms of finishes in the chase, 34th and 43rd at New Hampshire and Dover, respectively.
Yeah, but you're going to see this team come roaring back, and they're going to try to get as many wins and rack up as many points as they can between now and the end of the year and see where it stacks up. I don't think they're going to give up.
No, they're not going to give up. We might see a more determined Kyle Busch and this entire race team than what we've seen in so far this year. And we see, obviously they know how to win races, and I think this would be a good start for them. Unfortunately, things just haven't gone their way in these first two, and that's what makes it difficult in this playoff type situation.
Things haven't gone the way for the 88 car either. Dale Earnhardt Jr. coming off that disappointing 24th place finish that cost him 5 positions in the chase points a week ago. It was a tire issue for Earnhardt Jr. out of turn 4 at Dover.
Well, he just exploded that right rear tire. It looked like his car was just very loose. Put a lot of abuse on that right rear tire, and it finally just let go. Led to a long day for this 88 team.
Headed back to the garage area.
They were struggling. Here's Jeff Gordon, who started on the pole at Dover and then had a good solid run. It wasn't obviously, these guys need to go to victory lane, and he's a driver that's won here twice. As you can see, the first 2 races that were run here, Jeff went to victory lane.
Yeah, I look for this to be a pretty fast lap. He's in qualifying trim, and these guys are going to go out there and try to do all they can to try to qualify up front again, because they felt like that was a big advantage even at Dover. They didn't have a great car, but they had that good pit position that helped them to gain a few spots that they probably couldn't have otherwise.
Andy, we hear more, especially the chase teams talk about that they're putting more emphasis on this now, and I think they pretty much have the race stuff set up, and tomorrow's supposed to be a good day for practice. So I think they're realizing how important it is to get these cars up front in clean air.
Yeah, and if they can get those good qualifying positions, they can pass a lot of cars on Friday. They don't have to pass them all on Sunday.
We do have all that action coming your way throughout the weekend. Later today, NASCAR Sprint Cup Series qualifying at 4 o'clock Eastern Time, then Nationwide Series final practice. NASCAR now wrapping it up tonight at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Tomorrow, you heard the guys mention, live coverage, flag to flag, the NASCAR Nationwide Series at Kansas, 3 o'clock Eastern Time or 4 o'clock Eastern. NASCAR Nationwide final practice, NASCAR Sprint Cup final practice, and of course NASCAR now at 7 o'clock. There's the action tomorrow. Happy hour at 6:30, and then Sunday, 1 o'clock Eastern Time, NASCAR Sprint Cup at Kansas. Live flag-to-flag action on ABC, beginning with NASCAR Countdown, Alan, Brad, and Rusty.
The 2001 NASCAR Winston Cup champion, Jeff Gordon. Here's the 2003 NASCAR Winston Cup champion, Matt Kenseth. Tony Stewart is the 2005 NASCAR Nextel Cup Series champion.
It's the hard knocks, it's the long shots, it's believing in yourself when you're all you got. You don't turn back, you don't give in. Rising up to see the last man standing.
Look at Tony Stewart just jamming that throttle back in.
Gordon leads.
Here comes Matt Kenseth. How hungry do you think Tony Stewart is?
That 24 car makes some time.
He's throwing everything but the kitchen sink. Here comes Matt Kenseth.
Not once has a driver in the chase who won at Kansas gone on to win the championship. In fact, 2 years ago, look at Jimmy Johnson. He was 8th in the points, 165 out, and went on to become the NASCAR Sprint Cup champion, averaging almost an 11th place finish over the 10 chase races. Jimmy was very good here, though, a year ago. Set on the pole, had to go to a backup car, and still was able to lead laps and come out with a top 5 finish. Shannon.
Doc, Jimmy Johnson's been very good at a lot of tracks this year, including Indianapolis, sat on the pole 1, including Fontana, sat on the pole 1. Of course, this is the same car from both of those races. I spoke with the team before Jimmy Johnson went out for that first run. They said, we are working on qualifying here today. That is what we're starting in. That's what we're working on. We're working on getting the pole for this 48 team and starting off the race in that #1 position.
They were so good in qualifying a year ago. Of course, they lead all Sprint Cup drivers with 4 poles this year. Jimmy trying to get this car to start and finish up front. By the way, the last 2 times he drove this car, he did sit on the pole and win the race at Indianapolis and California. Here is a car that was probably the best car at Dover last week.
Yeah, he got crashed there, but he had a great car. Could have been 4 Roush cars going for that victory instead of 3.
Yeah, I saw where Jack Roush said that he was glad to win the race and obviously finished 1, 2, 3, but he's not sure that his best car that day had problems and didn't win the race. And he was talking about Jamie McMurray, what a great run he had. You see Carl Edwards here. He seems to be working on race setup. He has the most laps of anybody that's been out here so far. So I think they're going to work a little bit on race with this first set of tires, give Carl a chance to get used to the car a little bit.
Carl, back-to-back third-place finishes in the chase races thus far. Third at New Hampshire and Dover. 21 top 10s. He is the most top 10s of anyone in NASCAR Sprint Cup competition. Of course, the points leader. A couple of DEI cars, guys, sitting atop the speed charts.
Yeah, we see quite a few Chevrolets up there. 5 of the top 6 are Chevrolets, but Martin Truex is on top and Mark Martin right behind him, and just coming off of a great run for Mark Martin last week. He thought after talking to him after the race, the three of us talked to him, and he felt like that if that would have had about 20 more laps, that he would have had a good shot at him. His car just wouldn't come in on short runs.
Yeah, I talked to Screw Chief down in the garage today. He said they really felt like that last run they were going to have a real shot at that thing, but just a little bit too loose in that short run to really get it done.
Being a former winner here, I'm sure he's looking forward to this weekend also.
There's Tony Gibson, the crew chief.
Yeah, this car has back-to-back top 10 finishes the last 2 times out. Some news and notes for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series this week. The 84 driver, A.J. Allmendinger, officially out of this ride, maybe as soon as this weekend. In Red Bull race, the Red Bull team opting to go with the development driver Scott Speed, who had been in Formula One and then over to the ARCA Series. I know all of us have been impressed with AJ not only on the track but off this year.
Yeah, I talked to him down there this morning also, and I asked him what he was going to do, and he didn't sound all that confident that he had a deal done yet, but he's optimistic. He really wants to stay in stock cars. He's got other opportunities, but he said he's put in too much work over here to just not try to stay here.
Other news, a driver getting a chance to go to the Cup Series. Brad Keselowski will attempt to qualify twice in the 25 car. The GoDaddy.com Chevrolet for Hendrick Motorsports at Charlotte coming up, and again at Texas. So giving him a shot, DJ.
Well, the young man has proven he's ready to get in here and try to move forward. I know he's going to run another full year in the Nationwide Series next year, but Brad's on the fast track to move up, and well worth the effort that he's made and showing what he can do. Jeff Gordon's got his radio on, and
yeah, he's probably listening to these other guys and seeing what they're saying about their cars. That's a radio that'll actually scan other channels also, and he can hear what other guys are doing.
Let's listen to maybe what some of the guys are listening to. Here's Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s radio.
The front end's moving around a lot. The ride's not real rough, but the front end's on a stop or something, I think, all the time. I don't know, it's just, it seems to be sitting up on something. Kind of follows the racetrack. It's not rough, though. I think the front end get down a little bit further. And might give it a little bit better attitude for some aero gain on grip.
Aero gain on grip, getting the front end down. A lot of things to think about there, I guess, with the front splitter on these cars and what you can't do.
Yeah, you want to get it down as far as you can, but you don't want to hold it too high, and I'm sure that's what he was saying. He felt like the car was being held up by something, and it wasn't letting the car get down into the racetrack in the front and making the car push a little bit.
We got one of our team that's real good at getting down in terms of getting the front end down and getting them dialed in. Let's go down to our ESPN Tech Center, Tim Brewer.
Thanks, Jerry. Folks, what we're trying to do right here with the shock absorber and spring is get the splitter right here as close to the ground as what we can do. But in the result of doing that, maybe you got just a little bit too much spring in the car that don't let the car get down on the bump stops. By softening the spring up here, it's actually going to get down here and usually work this piece of rubber right here. But it's all in the effort, like he says, to gain aero balance. But when you get that air splitter right down on the ground, that's when you got maximum downforce on the front, and that's what the guys are wanting here. Downforce in the front and the back of the car as high as possible, make the car run the corners like Earnhardt Jr. wants to get around here.
Tim, that's a great explanation, and that's what Dale Earnhardt Jr. is talking about. And Dale, they got these guys in a pretty tight box in terms of what they can do with the front of the cars. If they could open it up a little bit and give them more leeway in terms of adjustments, what would you like to see them do?
Well, I think there's probably a couple of areas. It's been talked about. So we see Tony Stewart on the racetrack here now. But raising that front splitter to where they could get the car down and get that aero grip that they're looking for by being able to travel the front end just a little bit more. A lot of the guys aren't sure they really like the bump stop system. I think I hear a lot of complaints there with the way that makes the car drive. And there's one other thing that I know NASCAR is exploring, and that's a wider wheel. Not necessarily a wider tire, but a wider wheel that would give a bigger contact patch onto the racetrack and it would make the cars drive better, which would in turn make for better racing for the fans. You know, I don't know how we beat last week's racing, but maybe they could have run 3 wide all the way around there. But it would have been, you know, just some things that they're doing to make things better that they're exploring.
Tony Stewart, the 2006 race winner here. He only led 5 laps and did a lot on fuel mileage. He actually ran 71 laps on fuel mileage here 2 years ago. And that was a different car and a different fuel cell back then. Here's how he did it. He coasted down in the final laps. I mean, just coughing and sputtering, but Andy, he got there.
He got there. I don't think it was running at all by the time he got to the front straightaway. He didn't even know he'd won the race until his guys told him on the radio.
Had to get a little help from Denny Hamlin to get to victory lane, but he got there. And so Tony Stewart has been here 7 times, has 1 win, 3 top 5s, and 5 top 10s. Coming off his best run of the year last week at Dover, Matt Kenseth showing some life. Mike.
Yeah, he led 136 laps a week ago, Doc, and hopes to carry that momentum into this weekend. This was a pretty good racetrack for him. A year ago, he led 49 laps here as well, so he's hoping to keep that going. But so far, the car a little bit tight under throttle. They're trying to figure that out. Now, one thing I found rather interesting, and this is not isolated to the 17 team. There's a lot of teams doing this. They've got a lot of predetermined setup changes in mind. In fact, for example, Chip Bolin called for change number 4. Would not be specific over the radio as to what those changes were, but what I witnessed were rear spring changes and front shock changes, really trying to loosen that car up a little bit as they work on race trim on the 17.
Yeah, we saw Jeff Gordon with that radio headset on. He was listening to these other cars to see what they're changing and how it reacts to the car. And this is the way that the other teams kind of counteract that. They won't say exactly what they're changing. They'll kind of set these things up in advance, kind of knowing what they might change. Yeah. Say, okay, we're going to change number 4. Well, Jeff Gordon can't figure out what that one is.
No, but he's going to go see Mike Massaro and see exactly what they were doing there now, since Mike knows they were changing springs and sway bars. And
it's sort of like in football where the guys have to wear their little wrist coach, little wristband with the plays on it. They signal on a play, and you look it up and see which one it is. And so now what is Jeff Gordon doing down there, Mike?
Well, aside from perhaps, as you said, trying to steal some of those signals, there's a more practical reason why he's wearing the headset. Evidently, Jeff is very much under the weather today, and Steve Letarte does not want him screaming over the engine roars because his voice is very weak. And I was told there's another practical reason, too. Nobody wants to speak to him directly. No one wants to catch what he has.
Under the weather, I have seen some of the best performances when drivers aren't feeling well. Somehow they suck it up, and that's the weekend they probably have their best run of the year. Maybe it could happen for you Jeff Gordon fans. Six-time the NASCAR Sprint Cup guys have been on a 1.5-mile track, and who's the best all time on 1.5-mile ovals? Well, Jeff Gordon, the 2-time winner here, Jimmy Johnson. How about those Hendrick guys? Martin, Bobby Labonte, and Tony Stewart. But the guy who got the job done here a year ago was the guy who's been the hot man in the chase thus far. That race was shortened to 210 laps of 267, and Greg Biffle led 37 laps, went on to victory lane. He was not in the chase a year ago. In fact, only once in the 4-year history of the chase has a driver in the chase won the race. That was Mark Martin in 2005. The other winners, Tony Stewart in 06 and Nemechek, as well as Biffle a year ago, were non-chasers who went to victory lane here at Kansas. And oh, by the way, 6 of the current chase drivers in this race last year finished 29th or worse. Tony Stewart 39th, Kyle Busch 41st. So those guys didn't have a great day here anyway.
No, it's pretty much an action track. A lot of things happen here. It's good, tight, and close racing. So you have to stay tuned on Sunday to see exactly what's going to happen here again. See Greg Biffle in the pit area making some changes to his car.
And he can look over out his right side window and see that 99 car, which he saw chase him. He had to pass and deal with. There's Bob Osborne down in the Carl Edwards area of the garage.
Yeah, they're working on changing some things here. You know, he went out there and made those race runs and trying to work on his race setup a little bit. But what are they working on down there now, Shannon?
Well, guys, right now they're switching over to qualifying trim. You can see Bob Osborne working over his notes. Carl Edwards just walked back to the hauler after debriefing with Bob Osborne. The team telling me right now the car was just a little bit tight in those race runs. This was their plan all along, to get out there, run as many laps as they could in that race trim, then switch over to qualifying. Of course, this is a big race for Carl Edwards as well. He's very close to his hometown of Columbia, Missouri. He would love to win this race here this weekend, continue his streak, leading the point standings.
Shannon, last week Bob Osborne felt so bad when he made the 2-tire call on that last stop and Carl wanted 4, and he even apologized to Carl in the final lap, said, I lost the race for you. And I love what Carl Edwards said. He got back and race, it ain't over, bud. We're not out of it yet. And I love the fact that Carl Edwards would not let his crew chief get down and take blame for that. He thought, and he did drive a heck of a race to come home third.
Yeah, he made a great call back at Pocono to win them basically the race that day. So you're going to you just have to be together on these things, and they're going to be good calls and there's going to be bad calls, and you're going to go through a lot of this stuff, and you just have to make sure that you're on the same page at the end of the day.
Here's Kyle Petty. Big announcement, by the way, this morning here that they will have. You saw on our news and notes a second Victory Junction gang camp will be built here, beginning open up again next year, just about 5 miles from the racetrack. I know they're very excited about what that camp does and what it does for children and who are fighting life-threatening illnesses. They have the one there in North Carolina, and sort of in honor and tribute to the memory of Adam Petty, and they're very thrilled about what this one here in the Heartland is going to do for their prospects down the road.
Yeah, just another opportunity, and I tell you, you can't say enough about Kyle and Patty Petty and the job that they've done, and just the focus that they have in helping these children, and obviously is something that's very important to them, along with a lot of people in the NASCAR community. And we can't say enough about how much we care about the passion that they showed to help these out. As we see Michael Waltrip on the racetrack now. Michael had a great run last week with a top 10, and that was a top 10. I know he finished second at Loudon earlier, which was a calculated deal that they did between the rain and fuel strategy, but he ran his way into the top 10 last week. That was very impressive.
All the way from 40th starting position.
Yeah, this whole organization has really been on the upswing. The 44 team of Brudeman has also been running well. They're doing something right, a lot of things right.
All about getting these cars better and better. Third generation, fourth generation of the new car, and this team dialing it in. How about a guy who's seen a couple generations of Dodges come his way? In fact, used one generation of Dodge to win twice this year. Mike?
And Doc, you've heard of Allstate Insurance being the good hands people. Well, Casey Kane gets the good hands move of the race practice so far. See this piece of steel? It was about to fall. I mean, it's going to fall directly on a crew member's head. Casey reached right out and grabbed it. Cat-like reflexes. You're already a hero this weekend.
Yeah, I noticed it was going down. It was going to land right on the 18's Jackman's head, and I grabbed it. So I helped him out today. He doesn't even know what happened right now. He's working pretty hard, but we should tell him later maybe.
But we know. Let's talk about the race car. How is it so far in practice?
We're just trying some race trim things, trying to work on it. We had a pretty good test at Charlotte. I think we learned some things there, just testing different things to try to get better, and we're trying to do some of that stuff here right now. So it's not the best, but it's there's definitely some room to work with it and hopefully make it a lot better.
It's obviously been very difficult for you not being part of this chase, but How close are you to perhaps playing that spoiler role and getting a couple of wins and taking them away from these chasers here in these next 8 races?
I think we're a little ways off of that, but hopefully soon we'll be there. We've have a lot of great people at Gillette Evernham that are working hard to figure these cars out, and I think we can win races if we get the cars where we need them. So hopefully before it's over, we get some more wins, at least one more, and get to race with these guys. These top 12 seem like they're about the top 12 every week.
Well, good luck.
All right, thanks.
Doc, we're going to let Casey get back with his team and maybe play hero some more.
Yeah, I bet if we looked around, we'd find one of those women in that commercial that's following Casey around. They probably knocked that thing over to start with. They're always creating some kind of problem for him.
You heard Mike asking him about the Dodges. I mean, the Dodge has been, it's been a struggle. There's not a Dodge at all in the chase, and this was the highest finishing Dodge last week at Dover. Ryan Newman finished 13th, and behind him was Bobby Labonte driving the 43 car of the Dodge. And what's going on in the Dodge camp, guys?
That's hard to say. A lot of times when you see something that's, I call global, when you've got a whole make of cars that are not performing well, usually you look under the hood, you think maybe it's the engine department or maybe not making quite as much power. But, you used to look at that or even the aerodynamic side of it as maybe they don't have as good an aero package. But these cars are so similar and all alike that it's really hard to say. And sometimes it's just coincidental.
Sometimes it is. And I'm going to have to go on the side, and I'm obviously probably going to hear from somebody from Dodge, but I would have to say from the support side of it, when you've got the whole group that's just not performing, and you have as talented a race drivers and race teams as what you have here, makes you wonder if they're not getting the support that they need, that Dodge moving forward with stuff and literally keeping up with times with what they need. So there's too many good race teams and drivers here for somebody not to come out of there and be doing well. And I know Casey's won a couple of races. Ryan Newman won the Daytona 500. Kurt Busch won a race up there. But they not having at least one of these teams or drivers in the chase tells me that they need to get some better support and things from Dodge.
I think even the Dodge fans in the stands would say, come on, Dodge, step it up a little bit, guys. We got to be competitive week in and week out. Well, the only Dodge to win at Kansas Speedway was Ryan Newman. We turn back the clock to October 5th, 2003. He qualified 11th. Jimmy Johnson was on the pole, but when they waved the checkered flag, it was Ryan Newman in victory lane. Saturday night means college football on ABC. You'll either see primetime Big Ten matchup of the Fighting Illini taking on Penn State's tremendous offense, or catch the Virginia Tech Hokies taking on the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Saturday night football presented by Southwest Airlines on ABC tomorrow at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Carl Edwards out of the car talking things over with Bob Osborne.
Stand there looking at that monitor. They did some race runs earlier and actually stack up pretty good if they look at that. For actually being in race trim. Edwards sitting there in the top 10. He's in 9th so far.
A bit unusual to be out of the car with still a half an hour of practice left.
It takes a while to switch the car over to qualifying. The guys are still working on it more than likely.
That's a pretty quick lap for him to be in race trim, Andy, to have a top 10. As we see Denny Hamlin on the racetrack here, had his championship hopes. Not that he's out of it, but they took a big hit last week.
He's 40th on the practice sheet so far. Don't know what these guys are struggling with.
Kansas has not been good to Denny Hamlin. His best finish in 3 trips here has been 18th in 2006, and he almost had some issues here a moment ago.
Hey, you see a car gets a big wiggle getting in the corner, so they're struggling with that. Rear grip, it looks like.
2005, he had a wreck in practice, ended up finishing 32nd in the race. And a year ago, he finished 29th. Here's the 2005 incident.
They had the same problem he about had a while ago. Back end couldn't keep up with the front end there. Then he was okay in that. It's really strange as a driver. You look at racetracks, it's not that you don't necessarily like them, it's just that when you don't have success there, sometimes you just can't ever get that feel that you're looking for.
In fairness to Denny Hamlin, that 2005 was his very first ever NASCAR Sprint Cup start when he came here in October of that year and backed it in the wall. But
yeah, this car's still not very good, though. He went out for another run and was actually half a second off of his fastest lap. So they're not making any headway on this. Not a lot of cars on the racetrack. I guess everybody's in the garage working on them.
Yeah, probably a lot of them here. What we're getting are basically a lot of one-lap runs, and then guys that are working on race setup, they're probably about this point in time starting to change their cars over. So we got one car out here, Greg Biffle. Maybe that's why he's winning all the races, because he's the only guy practicing. Shannon?
Dale, over the radio, they just said that Greg Biffle was going to pull into the garage. They're going to switch over to qualifying trim. Right now, he is 34th on the speed chart. The car has been tight in these race runs for Greg Biffle. On that last change, they made some right rear spring changes for the 16. But arguably the hottest guy in the garage right now, of course, is Greg Biffle, hoping to make it a 3-4 this weekend. Of course, that's 3 victory lanes in 3 weeks here this weekend. Mike.
And Shannon, Tony Stewart, another guy in the garage, looking for his first win this year. He just came on the radio before he pulled in the garage, said, hey guys, I know the lap times don't show up, but that car was much better. A little bit too free on entry and exit, but otherwise much better than the way we started. I spoke with car chief Jason Shapiro just before he came in. He said, we're pretty happy with the race car. We're just making minor changes so far.
Guys, don't count out Tony Stewart. I mean, as my buddy Lee Corso says in college football, old Tony is sneaking around the chicken coop here a little bit. He's 7th in the points, and yes, he has not won. It has been 42 races since Tony has gone to victory lane at Watkins Glen in 2007, but he's finished second 4 times this year, and he is a previous winner here. There are some of the other streaks. Jeff Gordon, you see Harvick and Vickers, Elliott Sadler, who has been running very well of late here, particularly on 1.5-mile racetracks.
I wouldn't count Tony out. He's certainly they ran well enough during the middle part of the year that they put themselves in positions. We see Matt Kenseth here now, who, speaking of, hasn't won this year. He's another one of those guys looking to get to victory lane, has shown some signs of really being having the team and then the car capable of doing that here recently, where before I think they were just kind of running in the top 10 a lot, but weren't really challenging for victories, but did that last weekend at Dover.
Andy, you were a big believer that team chemistry and just having something good happen for a change really can ignite you. That run last week by this team, leading 136 laps, finishing second at Dover, what does it do for the 17 Bucks?
It fires you up. You know, it makes you realize that you have a team and a car, a driver, that's capable of winning these things. They missed it by just a little bit, and you go back and say, okay, guys, all we have to do is get just a little bit better, and we're going to be the guys spraying that champagne.
Last week at Dover, Delaware, you would be hard-pressed to find a better finish. In fact, the final 50 laps were sensational. Greg Biffle had come on the pit road, as had the other leaders, and Biffle had to drive on the outside to be able to get around the 17. But while he's messing with Carl Edwards, Kenseth takes the lead back. And guys, all 3 of us were screaming because Biffle was able to come around and pass both of them and take the win in back-to-back weeks.
We were holding our breath. I know Jack Roush and these guys on these teams were holding their breath during that race. That was a great, great finish.
That has to be a lot of fun as a car owner to sit there and watch your 3 drivers battling it out.
I'd love to
victory.
do it.
Yeah, wouldn't that be fun? But just a great battle these 3 professionals put on. I mean, that was so much fun to sit there and watch. To see these guys really battle each other as teammates, but every one of them, you know, wanting to go to victory lane.
Another battle taking place is actually for 13th in the point standings. Casey Kane right now has it, and David Reagan within 35 points. David coming so close to making the chase this year in only his 2nd full season in Sprint Cup racing.
We've talked about the progress that David Reagan and his team have made in just this David's 2nd year in this series, and he really has done a remarkable job to come in here and jump in these cars and be as young as he is, and he's impressed a lot of people in the garage area.
And you know, you see a lot of young guys come in, and they come in with a little different approaches sometimes. Some of them will come in here with a big flash. They'll tear up a lot of cars, but they'll run good, and they'll do a lot of things, and finally they get it all worked out and figured out how to win. This guy, though, is doing it a little different. He's come in here and been very methodically moving his way up and getting better, and I see him getting better and better every week, and I think that's something you can really build on.
Yeah, and I'm going to give him some credit because when he first came in here, before he got in at full time, he made a couple of people mad, some of the veterans. And
The old dart without feathers?
yeah, and they had a talk with him. But to his credit, you know, he took that to heart, and it wasn't that he was being told how to drive. It was just, hey, you're in a different league now, and we do things a little bit differently here, and you might just want to think about doing this in the future if you want to stay around here. And to his credit, he listened. Did it change that he's not driving hard? No, he obviously drives the race car very hard, but he goes about it a little differently, just like you said, Andy. Methodically now, he's worked his way into being a very respected race driver out there.
And give a call to Jimmy Finnig, the veteran crew chief, who literally laid down the law to the young driver and said, look, I've been running a long time. Mark Martin and I were very successful, nearly won the title 4 times, and it's all about being good within the system. And of course, David Reagan knows that on the track or off the track, it's important to follow the law.
I am David Reagan. I am a sheriff's deputy for the Crisp County Sheriff's Department. I look professional. It's a county that's neighboring my hometown, Unadilla, Georgia. I've got an old police car. It's a 1960 Ford Fairlane. It's painted up like the Barney Fife car on Andy Griffith's show. I don't carry a gun. I've got my badge with me today. I carry it wherever I go. You know, as far as pulling people over, arresting people, I'll let the professionals handle that. I am David Reagan.
NASCAR Sprint Cup practice here at Kansas Speedway, and DEI cars 1-2. Martin Truex Jr. himself riding a 51 race winless streak. Top of the speed charts, Mark Martin, who has won here a couple of years ago. Casey Mears, who finished 4th in this race last year, showing 3rd on the speed charts right beside his teammate Jimmy Johnson. Dale Earnhardt Jr. in the top 10, running well. Bill Elliott, how about awesome Bill up there in the 21 car?
Good run for Bill Elliott. Looks like they're working really hard on this car and making improvements with the Wood brothers.
Greg Biffle taking a little break. Had gone over to talk to the crew chief and taking a break in the final minutes of this session. Here is Carl Edwards back out. You had seen him talking to Bob Osborne while they were making adjustments on the car.
We know that we're going into qualifying trim here, Andy.
It takes a long time for them to change these setups from race trim to qualifying trim. There's so many changes you make. And it took a while for this 99 to get back out here, but he's back in qualifying trim, and that's probably why Greg was walking off. They're going to do the same thing to the 16 car, and it'll take, 10 or 15 minutes.
Carl's fast lap in practice is 31.89. It'll be interesting to see if he can improve on that, and that was in race setup.
Here's Marcus Ambrose, one of 14 drivers who will be doing double duty. And now, Marcus, this is the 47 Cup car that is owned by JTG Doherty. Jody and Tad Geschecter and Brad Doherty, the 3 owners for this car. And they will run, I guess, much of the rest of the year in this car here in the NASCAR Sprint Cup.
Yeah, trying to get prepared for next year. And that lap that you saw right there was his fastest lap of the session. He's 15th right now, and that was a 31.99. So pretty impressive for them right now.
They will have to get in on time and speed. There are 45 cars here. 2 will not make it, so he's one of them that will have to get in on speed. Here's the 42 car of Juan Pablo Montoya.
Showing a lot more speed here recently as far as when it gets time to go qualify and then in our Saturday practices.
Just moved up to 4th right there on that lap. They're definitely showing some speed now.
Yeah, that's a good lap by what we've seen these other drivers. We talked about Carl Edwards. He didn't run quite as fast. He was about a 1/10 and a half off. We see Kyle Busch right here looking at his car, trying to decide, I guess, what they're going to do. Mike?
Well, the car's a little bit loose, and the expression you just saw on Kyle Busch's face, not necessarily the expression that I've been seeing this morning. And you can imagine the surprise as when I walked through here about 10 minutes ago. They were laughing and smiling. Kyle was joking with the team. Despite the fact that they've gotten off to a pretty miserable start in the chase, they've kept their spirits high. And you can give a lot of credit to Steve Addington, the crew chief. I spoke with one of the members of this team this morning. He told me that throughout the course of the week, there was no formal meeting. But as they went about their work in the shop, Steve Addington would walk around and give guys a pat on the back, just trying to tell them to keep their heads up. There's still a lot of racing to go. He doesn't want this team to give up just yet. They know they're real good, and Addington's really trying to keep their spirits high. And with the laughing and the smiling I saw moments ago, I can tell it's working.
Mike, he was without a doubt, he was the favorite coming into the chase this year, and for good reason, with 8 wins and all the top 15s and laps led. But headed into New Hampshire early on, there were issues with the 18 car, a broken left front Heim joint. He spun the car after trying to make adjustments and gets tagged by McMurray, finishes 34th. Then last week at Dover, engine issues inside the car, 43rd and last place finish, which now puts Kyle Busch at the bottom of the 12 drivers ranked in the chase. Busch now 210 points back with 8 races to go. And there's Dale Earnhardt Jr. also back there. And guys, you know what? You may think I'm foolish, but I firmly believe that Kyle Busch, as good as he has been this year, can climb back into contention in this chase.
Well, as long as we have Talladega to go next week, I'm not going to count anybody in that group out, because anything can happen there. We'll have to see.
If we had been using the old system, if the points had not been reset when the chase began, that's where we'd be right now, because Kyle Busch had a pretty good lead, and he'd be 33 points back of Carl.
Tell you who's glad they did change it, reset it at 26 races. Greg Biffle sitting there in 6th. He'd be 351 points back. Shannon?
We tried a little bit of that earlier.
All right, yeah, we're down here with Greg Biffle, and guys, I'm going to joke around. This 3M right here should actually be a big bullseye, because all the guys are going for him right now. We were just talking about the car. How is it right now? I know you guys you're changing over to qualifying, but you were in race trim for the first couple of sessions.
Yeah, we didn't start out nearly where we wanted to be. Obviously, we missed the bump gaps a little bit on the front, and didn't have the car down on the racetrack like we needed to. So we weren't able to put up a fast time. I think we're 34th or 5th on the sheet, but we did get it going better, 10 laps in a row or 8 laps in a row. We felt pretty good about it, but switching to qualifying now, so we'll see if we can get on the other side of the page on the speed chart.
Now, I just joked about, obviously, everyone chasing you with the bullseye. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for you, knowing that everybody is out to get you right now on the track?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it affects us that much. We're just working on this 16 car, trying to get it going as fast as we can. We go out early. We got an early draw, so we got a lot of things going against us this weekend so far.
All right, and Greg Biffle pulling double duty, of course, the Nationwide Series and the Cup race this weekend, so a lot of time on this racetrack between Saturday and Sunday.
8 of the 12 drivers in the chase are also running the NASCAR Nationwide Series, including 5 of the top 6 guys in the chase points are running double duties. They're going to run a nationwide race on Saturday in a different car and a Cup race on Sunday. Here's the 5 car of Casey Mears, and DJ, we're talking about give a call to Casey. This car running very, very well.
Yeah, he's up in the 6th spot right now, and ever since the first laps that he went out on the racetrack, he's been very fast. I know he's run well here in the past, and if anybody out there needs something good to happen, it'd be nice to see Casey have a good, solid run and kind of a, what I think he would call uneventful day, to where just doesn't have any problems and can run the race that he wants to run.
In the initial runs, he was in the top 3 on the speed chart. Now some of the guys are starting to run qualifying runs. We see it kind of getting jumbled up at the top. Elliott Sadler now jumped up to 2nd spot. Jimmy Johnson actually 3rd right now.
You saw Casey finish 2nd here in 2006. He finished 4th here in 2007. And the faster they go, the better the Mears family likes it. In fact, when you talk to Casey and ask him about his heroes, he doesn't have to look very far to tell you who they are.
There's a lot of guys that had a lot of talent that I look up to, but my heroes were my dad and my uncle. I mean, I grew up going to the races with my dad, from the very beginning of my life. Obviously, respect and look up to what my uncle's done over the past few years. What he was able to accomplish in Indy, and he was called the master of ovals at one point.
And Rick Mears is now a 4-time winner of the 500.
For my dad was, winning the Baja 1000. He did that 4 times. Just really, really look up to those guys and respect what they say and the advice that I get from them.
Race number 3 in the chase for the Sprint Cup comes your way on Sunday. Remember, Greg Biffle won this race a year ago. Kurt Busch led the most laps, and Jimmy Johnson went from 4th to become the championship leader and never looked back. Coverage begins at 1 o'clock Eastern time on ABC, all with NASCAR Countdown. Alan Bestwick, Brad Doherty, and Rusty Wallace will break it down. And then 267 laps, 400 miles at Kansas Speedway at 1 o'clock. The guy at the top of the charts, we told you, Martin Truex Jr. And Shannon is standing with him.
Yeah, we're down here with Martin Truex Jr. is out of his car. 5 laps in this practice session. How's the car, and what are you guys working on right now?
It's pretty good right off the truck. We're just trying to get the balance a little bit better. It gets a little bit too tight in 3 and 4, so keep working on it and see what we get. But so far the best for the Chevy's pretty good. Got some speed in it, which is a good thing.
Well, right now you look great for qualifying. How do you think this car is going to be in race trim later today?
I think it'll be good. We did a Goodyear tire test here a few weeks ago and was real happy with the car, with the lap times, the way it drove. So it's the best feeling car I've had in a while. Hopefully it'll be good all throughout the weekend.
All right, and earlier this week, of course, a lot of guys, all you guys went to Charlotte, tested a 1.5 mile track. We're at a 1.5 mile. Anything you guys learned there that you can apply to Kansas this weekend?
No, not really. We didn't. We've always kind of took Charlotte and put it over there as its own racetrack. We've never really found anything that worked there. We use other places or vice versa. So it's kind of a unique place for us. We've never been really good there. But we had a pretty good test. We learned some stuff for there, but I don't think we can use it anywhere else.
All right, of course, Charlotte's in 2 weeks. Right now, Martin Truex Jr. is in that #1 spot on top of the speed charts, Doc.
His one win coming a year ago at Dover back in the spring. Here's a couple of guys enjoying a light moment in the garage area.
Yeah, it looks like Junior's become a comedian. He's got math, laughing a lot. We don't see that a whole lot. But having fun, yeah, just spending time. And these guys, all these guys have been together. As Shannon was just pointing out, Tuesday and Wednesday, they were all in Charlotte testing for 2 days. So just having a little bit of fun as they wait to get back in the cars. We see Scott Riggs on the racetrack now.
He moved up just a little bit to 22nd on that lap.
Scott, one of the talented young drivers, talked to him a little bit after the race at Dover last week, and looking towards 2009, had a couple of situations he was looking in and offers as to where he might go next year. Love to see him stay full-time here in the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series. Worked his way up the hard way. Started out in the late model ranks, and the trucks, and then the Nationwide Series, and now in the Sprint Cup.
He sounded pretty confident that he might have something good for next year, so that was good to hear from him.
Maybe something good for Juan Pablo Montoya. A little qualifying effort going on here for his Dodge.
He's been pretty solid so far this whole practice session and getting better.
Yeah, they've really been working hard. They were struggling the first, 2/3 of this season. Just seemed like they couldn't find the speed that they were looking for.
But it really didn't do enough. Got a little bit loose in, getting to the green, getting in, like when I went into 3. It's a little loose getting in. I turned better getting to the green. It's just tighter, a lot faster, because warmer tires.
His teammate Reed Sorensen just moved up to 11th, so Ganassi's found a little something. Maybe that test at Charlotte was a benefit for this team.
Yeah, and actually Reed wasn't in his car at Charlotte. I think the team might have found something. He actually didn't test the car. Jeremy Mayfield's actually in the car there testing, and I saw a number of times Reed was there just kind of looking at things from the outside, and I guess seeing what he could learn and what they could find to help them. So hopefully it will be beneficial to them this weekend.
Reed Sorensen going to Gillette Evernham for 2009. He will be over there. Patrick Carpentier is the one that's currently there at Gillette Evernham, who is now looking. Here is the only driver to win from the pole at Kansas Speedway, Joe Nemechek. Nemechek probably has a weekend at Kansas he will never forget. We turn back the clock to 2004. Front row Joe in the NASCAR Nationwide Series from 19th starting spot takes the win, and it was a gut-wrencher there at the finish line with his damaged car, but he was the one celebrating. And then on Sunday from the pole, it would be Nemechek who would become the first and only pole sitter to win at Kansas Speedway. Back-to-back on Saturday and Sunday, the only sweep that's ever taken place at this racetrack.
Joe's in 33rd spot right now. And 32.15 for his fast lap, so it's about 0.8 of a second off of our fastest time. Dale Earnhardt Jr. just jumped to 4th, and we see Matt Kenseth. They'd been on the charts together right there in 9th and 10th, but Jr. just moved up to 4th spot. Matt Kenseth is in the 10th spot, 31.79. There you see Jr.
Way looser in 1 and 2 the whole corner. 3 and 4 was it looser than it was before.
Had to be better somewhere. They jumped up on the sheet there.
Yeah, that was about a 1/10 and a half quicker than what he had run.
Tony Urey Jr. told me in the garage area, the crew chief for Dale Jr., that they had a really good test at Charlotte this week at Lowe's Motor Speedway. And they were all pumped up about that. Dale Jr. seemed to be excited about the car they were going to have there. And this is the car, by the way, that he ran at Charlotte back in May and led the most laps, led 76 laps on his way to a 5th place finish.
Truex is at the top of the sheet, but he did that the first lap on the track, and he's not really been able to back that up. He's made a few runs since then, and it's about a half a second off his fastest lap that last run.
Yeah, that's what I was going to point out. Some of these other laps these guys are putting up are actually good laps in comparison to what Martin Truex had done. We see Jeff Gordon back out on the racetrack right now, trying to get his car just a little bit faster than what he has to this point.
I talked to the guys in the garage area. They said they would concentrate solely on qualifying, and that's what they've done so far this session.
31.91 is his fastest lap, and that was early on.
Yeah, he's only made 3 laps total, so this is really only his second time out.
I did say earlier that Jeff was a little under the weather this week. I'm sure a good pole run here or something would help him feel a lot better tonight.
7th place finish at Dover jumped him 3 spots in the point standings after the disappointment not finishing in the top 10 in New Hampshire. Jeff now 8th overall in the points. Still looking for that first win in 2008.
Moved up a few spots right there.
Moved up to 12th there. Yeah, that was probably from the splitter.
I'm guessing it was. I sure don't like to see that, but it looked like it might have been the splitter when he got down in the corner, backed off the gas, and the front end dropped down.
Here are the point standings and where they are currently running in this practice session. You see Jeff Gordon moved up to 12th. Jimmy Johnson 3rd overall. Dale Earnhardt Jr. 4th overall. So Junior's car coming into him. Carl Edwards, you see back in the pack there. Denny Hamlin 42nd. Ouch. They are struggling with that 11 car. Who's going to be the last Ford standing here at Dover, Delaware?
Oh, yeah, we got a 3-way battle for the lead here now. Jack Rouse is feeling pretty good that he might go to victory lane today.
Little fusion of the fusions there.
Carl Edwards is going to give it everything he's got. Here we go. Back Kansas takes the lead. You know, I thought it couldn't get any better than it did a while ago, but it just did.
I think that the 4 tires now are starting to overhaul Carl Edwards.
Ain't over. You're damn right it's not. You just keep racing, buddy. Follow him. Keep working if you got time.
Oh, wow, touch. Biffle's got him now.
He's got him. This is what he's looking for.
Right here. That's the pass.
Biffle beats the monster and wins at Dover, Delaware.
That's the best driver, the best car, and the best pit crew won that race.
Third's no good, but that's the most fun you can have right there. That's a blast.
We all wanted to win. I guess I'm second happiest here.
All about teamwork, and the Roush Fenway boys got it done last week at Dover. 1st, 2nd, and 3rd as we continue our iLive coverage of NASCAR Sprint Cup practice at Kansas Speedway. And this got some teamwork going on here. Look, you got 3 DEI cars there in the top 10. You got 3 Hendrick cars, and both the Red Bull cars are there. Allmendinger and Vickers, 8th and 9th. And how about Elliott Sadler? How good is that Dodge for Elliott? That's got to make him smile. Mike?
He has been smiling, and the numbers show why. He's 2nd on the speed chart right now. How happy are you with this race car?
I tell you what, we're very happy with it right now. The Garmin Dodge is driving good, and you know, this Charlotte test we just had could not come at a more perfect time for Gillette Evernham Motorsports. We've learned a lot of things the last few days this week that we could apply to this style of racetrack, a 1.5-mile racetrack. So we've been a little off the last month and a half, so it's pretty cool to go test hard, make some new pieces. The guy at the shop worked overtime this week to get our Kansas cars, turn around and bring out here, and it seems to be paying off for us.
And it comes at a good time. A veteran driver like you making his 350th career start this weekend, Doc. Woo. How would you compare yourself as a driver now to, say, 349 races ago?
And that's why I got Garmin on this weekend for the 350th start. They say I'm getting kind of senile. I couldn't find my way to the track anymore. But I think, you know, I probably do a lot of little things a little bit better and hopefully got more experience. Getting on and off pit road, getting in and out of the pits box, doing a better job when I'm in lap traffic and around it, better job with information, stuff like that. Hopefully I'm a little bit smarter race car driver than I was back then. So, you know, I try to pride myself on that. But 350 starts. Some of them been fun, some of them have not been fun, but it's been an honor to be a part of this sport for 10 years and hopefully get to stay around 10 more.
You are a pretty smart race car driver, so break this car down in race trim. You did a few runs in race trim. How good will it be in the race?
I think it'll be okay. You know, most of the guys I've talked to, the track's really, really slick right now. It's the first time we've been here with this new car. Turn 3 and 4, a lot of guys are having problems being a little bit too tight. We can't get the car pointed as good as we need to make the straightaway as long as we need it to show that horsepower. So we're going to work on some more race trim stuff tomorrow. Just try to keep it rotating, keep it going pretty fast through the center of the corner. We feel like we can do that. We feel like we can make passes on Sunday and have a competitive race car.
Well, Doc, you heard Elliott talk about the Charlotte test. He said the Charlotte test that took place during the daylight, they almost exclusively practiced for Kansas during that session.
A lot of people, us included, really think a lot of Elliott Sadler. What a great guy. One of the nicest guys in the garage area. Last win for Elliott coming at California back in September 2004, some 4 years ago. Love to see him have a good shot here this weekend.
Isn't it interesting perspective from different drivers? Wasn't it just Martin Truex who said, when we look at Charlotte as just being a test for Charlotte, and then you've got a team that's looking for some good things to happen and really needing some direction. And Elliott Sadler says the test at Charlotte couldn't have come at a better time for racetracks just like this. So just depending on what your needs are as to how you look at things.
Glass is half empty or is it half full? So obviously, here's the 48 team, and here's talking about someone who's been very good at Charlotte over the years. This Lowe's team at Lowe's Motor Speedway, and they were very good at this racetrack a year ago where they sat on the pole.
Yeah, I think their glass is pretty much full most of the time. I don't know if this ever half empty or half full. These guys are on it all the time.
7/8 or more here lately.
I went down and talked to the guys in the garage here this morning. I said, tell me about this car. I said, well, it's a car we took to Indianapolis, and we sat on the pole and won the race. And we took this car to California, and we sat on the pole and won the race.
And he just moved up to second.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Yeah, pretty good car, I'd have to say. That's a pretty good time right now, especially with the temperature going up. And you'd heard Elliott Sadler just talked about how hot and slick the track was.
We know Jimmie Johnson as a two-time and reigning NASCAR Sprint Cup champion, but who really knows the driver better?
I'm Jimmie Johnson. It's time to find out who knows me better, my wife or my crew chief. What is my most hated chore?
Changing light bulbs.
He's a driver. He doesn't do any chores. I mean, seriously.
I'd have to say changing the light bulbs. My wife asks me to do that all the time, and it's the last thing on the honey-do list that I get to. If there was a movie about my life, who would play me?
Ben Affleck.
Colin Farrell.
Colin and I have this eyebrow thing where they're on different planes, so it would work well because Colin has that same deal, so it would be more accurate than anything. What is the first car I owned?
The A-Team van, I think.
I think he had a little pickup truck, if I remember correctly.
That would be a 1986 Ford Ranger, black, by the way. Who's my favorite American Idol winner?
American Idol? Hell, I don't know. I don't even watch it.
Oh, Kelly Clarkson.
Kelly Clarkson didn't win, though, right? She didn't win? Okay. Kelly Clarkson. It's obvious my wife knows me best. I spent enough time with Chad to almost call him my second wife, but didn't come close.
Final minutes of practice here for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series cars. Jeff Gordon moving off. These guys likely have qualifying setups on. That's why they're taking their time getting out one by one to have some open track. And here's the 99 car, our points leader, Carl Edwards, back in the garage. Carl getting buckled up to head back out here to see what he's got here in the final minutes of this practice.
Yeah, he's 18th on the chart, and he actually, when he put his qualifying trim, only ran 4/100ths of a second faster than what he did with his race setup in. So I'm sure they're searching for a little more speed.
I think they're going to get a little more serious about it now that this thing's winding down.
What about the kid from Kansas, Clint Boyer, coming home? Home track visit. Was not good early in this session, was hovering around 41st or 42nd. Just went back out and ran a lap much better.
Yeah, he's 13th now overall and 31.78. That's a pretty good lap right now in this heat.
You see that fan in there, and Kevin Harvick, he's sitting there as they make some adjustments and some changes. We've documented how hot these cars are, but it's extremely hot out here. The temperatures are supposed to be in the mid-80s here today. So as these guys sit in there, just getting a little air blown on, you see Jimmie Johnson here, who's up in the second spot. He went out just a few minutes ago and ran a 31.46.
Joey Logano in the 96 car, making what will be his, if he qualifies, he has to get in on time and speed, his second start of his career in the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series. Remember, he ran the New Hampshire race and finished 32nd.
Yeah, but I believe he's seeing this racetrack for the first time. Today is his first time being on it, and obviously in a race car. So he actually hasn't put up that bad of a time. You can see the front end of that car, he kind of chasing it down into turn 3. It's moving around a little bit. It'll be interesting as we watch him here, getting up to speed coming down the front stretch. You can see there's a dog leg here. You go right to the bottom and then back out towards the wall as you enter turn 1.
That's the first chance that you get to see what your car's going to do after you've made changes. When you pile that thing down into turn 3, coming up to speed, kind of gets your attention sometimes, doesn't it?
Always exciting, and with the air pressures up, it's not quite as bad. But you know, you have to get through that corner extremely fast if you're going to make a good lap. That's just as important as making that corner, and the lap itself is getting up to speed and getting to the start-finish line.
This 18-year-old impressed so many people in the NASCAR Nationwide Series by winning a pole in his second start, winning a race in his third ever start in that series.
And that's all well and good, but he's in the big leagues now. This is going to be, he didn't run quite as fast there as he had his last time out. His best lap's 32.07. He ran 32.15 on that lap.
Too loose. That loosened it up. Whatever you guys did there, looser in and off quite a bit.
34th overall in the speed charts right now. Let's update Kevin Harvick's progress. Shannon.
Stock 29, Kevin Harvick, you can see him sitting inside the car. They're going to go back out, make another qualifying run. That last run was their fastest lap of the day. The team told me they were on scuffed tires for that last lap. They made a few changes. They're going to send Kevin back out. But I think the most interesting thing about this 29 team this weekend is that this is the same car from last week. This car is their workhorse. It's been on the track. Only one time it has not finished in the top 10. So what they did was they brought it back to the shop last week, 6th place finish. He worked his way through the field for that 6th place finish, brought it back to the shop, got it ready for this weekend. But my question to you, Andy, is how difficult is that for a team, especially when you have testing going on, to turn a car around so quickly?
Well, Shannon, when you've got a team like Richard Childress that has a lot of depth, it's not as bad as you think to get that done. And when you've got a car that is as good as this one is to the team, you really want to turn it around. And I've always been a fan of that. If you've got a good horse, ride that thing. You know, keep using it.
Yeah, that's interesting that they would do that, because most of the teams and drivers and crew chiefs that I've talked with say that it's about a 2-week process usually to turn these cars around. So most of them are opting not to try to do something that quickly with these cars. But if you're Kevin Harvick and you take care of your equipment, it's probably a lot easier to do.
Kevin Harvick has not won in 63 races, but it's all about momentum here in the chase. And Kevin Harvick, you saw a moment ago, has now posted 8 straight top 10 finishes.
He's a threat because when he gets on a roll, he's hard to beat.
Talk about peaking at the right time. Momentum coming their way here.
Kevin Harvick is the guy that's been kind of creeping up lately and just knocking down these great finishes.
Kevin's just not a guy that's going to make a mistake.
The guy that's been running good is Kevin Harvick.
They are potentially peaking at the right time. They have been running really well the last couple months.
Kevin lately has been kind of the dark horse guy that's been creeping in. He knows how to race for points. He's going to be tough.
Race number 3 in the chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup comes your way on Sunday, 1 o'clock Eastern time on ABC. Beginning with NASCAR Countdown. Alan Bestrick, Brad Daugherty, Rusty Wallace will set the stage. And then, folks, 400 laps, 400 miles, 267 laps. It was Greg Biffle who won this race a year ago. Jimmy Johnson took over the points lead after this race and never looked back. This driver here had a very good run in this race a year ago. Clint Bowyer finished second here in his home state of Kansas, the Sunflower State. He is from Emporia, Kansas, just about 100 miles away from where we are at Kansas Speedway. 107 miles to be exact. Clint Bowyer, NASCAR Sprint Cup, we mentioned the one top 5, his second place finish here a year ago. Hasn't been quite so fortunate in the NASCAR Nationwide Series. And again, one of the drivers doing double duty. He's the points leader in the Nationwide Series.
Yeah, he's going to need a good race on Saturday and Sunday to keep both of those championship
We saw how the back of that car, when you go into corners, the 07 car was crabbed out, like sort of it's like a crab walk, so the back end is over from the front end and a couple inches. You wonder, how does that happen? Well, explain to you how they do that. Let's go down to our ESPN Tech Center and Tim Brewer.
Jerry, what we're basically trying to do is get the car to run in the same situation of where the left front tire's out on the line, see where the left rear tire's at. It's basically over about 10 inches. What we're trying to do right there is simulate the downforce that we try to get in a wind tunnel, and that's yawing the car, meaning turn the car into the corner like 3 or 6 degrees. But how do we do that? Hey, we naturally have camber, and what that is, that's camber with a wheel leaned in at the top. But what we actually do here to get the thing to run a little sideways is we actually take the rear end housing and the snout and we machine it to where we can actually tow this wheel out 1 degree. That's what NASCAR will allow us to do. But that's what puts the car in that mode of being out 3 to 6 degrees, and that's the reason it runs kind of sideways down the straightaway to attribute all the downforce we possibly can through the corner, and that makes the car run faster.
Tim, now I understand why the rear end looks different than the front end, but what's the liability, Andy, in doing something like that? What do you got to put stress and strain on something back there when you tow it out like that?
You might put a little more stress on the axles. You know, when you camber the rear ends, we started doing that many years ago. You crown the splines on the axle because that axle runs straight out through there, and you got to actually have a little offset. So that offset that you have in that crown, that axle will actually take up for that toe in. It's about the same amount of angle and toe out.
See Dale Jr. there on the racetrack. Here's Bill Elliott, who just got finished running his fastest lap of the day. He's in 12th spot right now, 31.71 so a great effort for Bill Elliott and that Wood Brothers team in their Motorcraft Ford.
Runner-up finish here in 2003. Awesome, Bill. Shuts it off, a little splash of fuel there in the exhaust. Here's the 31 car of Jeff Burton in the chase. Finished 5th here in 2006. Was actually the chase points leader in 2006 when they left here. Had a good car here a year ago. Had problems with a cable attachment to the fuel pump. And Andy, they've struggled a little bit in this session.
That car looks like it's porpoising quite a bit. You see how it gets harsh down on the bump stops, and it makes the car actually jump back and forth, fore and aft. And that's something you try to eliminate, but these bump stops cause a lot of problems like that. Caution's out on the track right now. A little bit of debris out on the track. Jimmy Johnson, I think he said he saw it or maybe hit it.
Jeff Burton, we talk about him being so consistent, and no matter where he qualifies, he's going to probably get a top 10 finish, as evidenced by what happened at Dover a week ago. When it comes to championships, a lot of drivers consider the 31 driver, Jeff Burton, a threat to win it.
Jeff Burton's that guy that is so good at racing.
Jeff Burton in a 31 car always is a factor.
Jeff is just consistent. He's going to be in there every week, digging as hard as he can every lap.
He's a guy that has that experience level like Jeff Gordon or Tony Stewart.
He could be a factor before this thing's over.
He's been there, he's raced for him before, and understands what it's all about.
He's the one who I think could go get this done without winning a race. I mean, he could go run 3rd or 4th every week and win this championship. Nobody discounts Jeff Burton.
Less than 4 minutes remaining in this practice session, and now it's going to get very busy on the racetrack. They are lined up. And DJ, what's this like to get in the car? You're hoping to get maybe try to get one clean lap?
Yeah, trying to get a clean lap. That's the funny part of it. We've seen these guys all taking their time and not really a lot of cars on the racetrack, and now things just go crazy. You just pull out there and get what you can get. And one car that's been pretty good here, Dale Earnhardt Jr., we see Denny Hamlin back on the track. But I think, Mike, you're with Junior?
Yeah, and he's been in the top 10 all day. How happy are you with the race car?
Well, I'd like to get a little bit better. We're okay, you know. We just need a couple little things. We made a lot of little adjustments, and we've changed the way the car acts, but we haven't really found much more speed. So, but it's good, and we tested really hard for this race, and you know, just hopefully we can keep some momentum going this weekend. We had a good test at Charlotte. Amp Energy Chevrolet National Guard is hopefully going to be a good weekend this weekend. I think it's going to be fun.
Still a lot of racing to go in this chase, but obviously what happened last week, a bit of a disappointment. How does that affect the way you look at the rest of the season and how this chase is going to unfold?
We just don't want to have that happen anymore. It was a frustrating weekend for us, but we got through it. And we just had, next time we go to Dover, we just need to have an answer, you know. But we still got some great tracks coming up, and anything can happen. And we're still, I still feel like we've got a great shot, and the team's really confident. So as long as we maintain our confidence and a good positive attitude, we can make it happen.
And you can hear that confidence in his voice, Doc. He definitely has a shot at the pole this afternoon.
Mike, you really can. He's really good on mile-and-a-half racetracks. And DJ, 5 of these 8 tracks left are mile-and-a-half ovals, and that's what Earnhardt Jr. That's in his wheelhouse.
Yeah, I was talking to Junior the other day at Charlotte, and he's very confident that they have a good shot at not only winning some more races, but winning this championship. And that's what they have to do. They just have to be a little better, and hopefully they don't have any problems.
Something on the racetrack, Andy, that the 48 might have hit.
Yeah, he's already out of the groove right here. So he's hit something, or either tried to avoid hitting something and moved up the racetrack quite a bit.
Yeah, I think that's what caused him to get out of the groove, was he hit that on the entrance to the corner. I'm not sure what it was.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
That'll do it every time. That's a hammer somebody left on the car, probably on the ductwork or inside the car there that fell out.
Here are the top 10 in terms of practice speed for this session. Truex, his teammate Mark Martin is there. Paul Menard, all 3 DEI, 3 of the 4 DEI cars up there. Jimmy Johnson set on the pole a year ago. Juan Pablo Montoya. Elliott Sadler running awfully well. Big improvement after that team got all pumped up about what happened at the test at Charlotte. Jeff Gordon is the only 2-time winner here. Kevin Harvick is on a roll. 8 straight top 10 finishes. He could be a factor. Lots of motorsports coming your way. Qualifying coming up later today at 4 o'clock Eastern time. Final practice, NASCAR now. And, of course, tomorrow we will have flag-to-flag coverage of the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series final practice and the NASCAR Nationwide Series coverage as well. For Dale Jarrett, Andy Petrie, and our entire ESPN crew, I'm Jerry Punch, once again inviting you to join us back here later today, 4 o'clock Eastern time for live coverage of NASCAR Sprint Cup qualifying. Coming up next, the best of Mike and Mike in the morning. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sport.